Hi, I'm Professor Angus Kress Gillespie from the American Studies Department at Rutgers University, and I'm here with Spook Handy of New Brunswick, New Jersey, who's often been called the best folk artist you've never heard of. Spook's music tells the story of America through the old-fashioned medium of folk music. He tells about the people he's met, places he's been, the experiences he's had, traveling all over the nation. He addresses personal and spiritual issues through engaging and uplifting songs that come both from tradition and from his own ample supply of original compositions. His music draws influences from many diverse styles, such as blues, bluegrass, the music of Appalachia, and it's my pleasure to welcome Spook Handy to our studio today. Spook, can you tell us a little bit about your growing up in Montclair, New Jersey?
Well, yeah, I grew up in Montclair. I lived on a dead-end street called Alvin Place. For those folks who know Montclair, it's right off of Valley Road. And at the end of the street was the railroad tracks. And my mom always used to tell us not to play on the railroad tracks because it was obviously because it was dangerous. And to me, that was a challenge. There was a challenge to actually go out and play on the railroad tracks when you got the chance. And so I would walk, this is back in the days when kids would wander away from home. I would wander, a good, 200, 300 yards from my house down the dirt road to the end where the trains were, and I'd just sit there and, pull on my chin and think about what was on the other side of those railroad tracks. And I used to make up all these stories about what was there. And Montclair is actually built on the side of a hill, too. So behind the train tracks was a mountain. So I always dreamed about going into the mountains. It was probably a hill that raised 100 feet further above sea level. But Montclair also is neat because it's a very progressive school system. And I got to go through the entire school system and got exposed to a lot of various ways people thought. There were conservatives, there were liberals, there were people who knew a lot about history and culture, and people who were deep into the arts and stuff like that. So it was a pretty well-rounded education as a kid.
So as I understand it, later on you went to Rutgers and you got your bachelor's and you studied math and business, and you did well. You got a Phi Beta Kappa, but then you chucked it all aside and changed career paths altogether. What was your thought process, and what did your parents say?
Well, here's the thing, is I think that I'm a pretty self-directed individual. I don't think that I was guided a lot as a child, and I didn't really know what my direction was. The reason I went to Rutgers was because one day when I was in April of my senior year of high school, the guidance counselor pulled me aside and said, "Are you going to apply to any colleges?" And I said, "Well, how do you do that?" Where should I apply? She said, "Well, apply to Rutgers." And I did, and I got accepted, so I went to Rutgers. I studied math because it was easy for me. I'm good at math. Not because I had any vision of using it or anything like that. My vision was being a free spirit and taking up time and space in college and having fun. And when I graduated college, I very quickly became enamored with the idea of living a lifestyle that's less structured. Little did I know what it was like to be a full-time musician. It's a pretty structured lifestyle in a very difficult way. But the idea of, you get to travel and you get to play music, you get to stay out till 3 o'clock in the morning and sleep till noon and stuff like that. And so I bought myself a guitar and pursued the path of musicianship.
Can you tell us a little bit about Howard Schwartz and your apprenticeship with him, and you're getting your feet wet in the music business?
Yeah, well, I feel, this is very interesting. I feel that, people talk about coincidence, and I think any two things that happen at the same time is a coincidence, but no two things are a mere coincidence. There's always something else behind it. And it was right when I was in my 5th year of college. I was getting ready to graduate. Well, I had a double major, so it wasn't.
Yeah.
That was a complete goof off. I majored in math and business, and in the January before I graduated, a fellow moved in downstairs from me in the apartment complex I lived in, who played banjo, and the guitar, and the 12-string guitar, and a harmonica. His name was Howard Schwartz. I would not be surprised if some folks listening to the show remember Howard. He had a band called Wood and Strings, and they were playing bluegrass, folk rock, and stuff like that. And he moved in the same week that I bought a guitar, and I went out on the porch. I don't know how that happened. It was January, but January, February, must have been March or April. I went out on the porch and started strumming the guitar, and he immediately recognized I needed some help, and came and showed me some chords. But when I graduated college and decided to pursue a career as a musician, I immediately got a job doing sound for Wood and Strings, and I was helping run the soundboard when they played their gigs. And the other wonderful thing that happened was one day Howard came home and said, "Spook, I just signed you up to play at the open mic down the street." And I was scared out of my wits. He said, "Don't worry, I'm going to play with you. Shelly, the bass player, is going to play with you. We're going to plug in. We're turning your guitar as quiet as it can be, so no one's going to hear you. And all you have to do is sing, and we're going to sing one of your songs." And that was my foray into the music world.
Was that at the Corner Tavern?
Believe it or not, it was at a little pizza place called wow, what was the name of it?
You forgot.
I forgot the name of it. And right now it's called De Galas. It got bought up a few years ago. It's called De
Also on
Galas.
Commercial Avenue.
On Commercial Avenue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's fast forward to the Corner Tavern. It's that little place that everybody knows in the shadow of the parking garage.
Yeah. No, that's the Court Tavern.
Oh, that's the Court.
Yeah, a lot of people get that mixed up. Yeah.
Okay.
Fast forward is that the pizza mill, which is where we had the open mic, stopped having the open mic.
Oh, you remembered pizza.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so everybody wanted somewhere else to go and play an open mic, and someone said. And Howard said to me, he said, "Spook, why don't you do it?" I said, how do I do it? And Howard taught me everything I needed to do to run an open mic. So I found a place at the Corner Tavern and started every Monday, and then after a few years changed to every Tuesday. For 20 years we had an open mic. 1,000 shows.
Wow.
Yeah.
And tell me a little bit about the Mine Street Coffee House.
Well, that's the funny thing. That's when I started actually that's when I started honing in my dream a little bit. I heard about the Mine Street Coffee House, and I went down one day they had an open mic once a year. It was the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and I went down there and played, and then I asked the fellow Stephanie Legend's husband Ted if I could play there one day, and he said sure. They hired me to play the following June, and not knowing anything about folk music or anything like that, I went in and I played the music that I grew up with. I played This Land Is Your Land, If I Had a Hammer, some John Prine songs, Where Have All the Flowers Gone? Next thing you know, I'm labeled as a folk musician. I'm like, oh, how do you like that?
Well, that's a nice segue, because what I want to do is, I studied folklore in graduate school at the University of Pennsylvania, and one of the textbooks that I studied has a definition of folk song, and I'd like to read it to you.
I would like to hear it.
Okay. It says, "The folk song is a song or a lyric poem with melody which originated anonymously among unlettered folk in times past and which remained in currency for a considerable time, as a rule for centuries." So with that definition in mind, with no disrespect, it would seem like you're not a folk singer at all.
Well, I don't mind that either, but I will add one term to that definition. That would be the term that's being defined. I would say that's traditional folk.
Okay.
Traditional folk, and I'll tell you what, the folk community and the music community at large can debate this for centuries, and they probably have, what the folk music is. But traditional folk music, let's say, there's people who are anonymous.
Yeah.
You don't know who wrote the song. It comes out of the culture.
Yeah.
But I think that today, and even dating back 100 years or further, there are people who are not anonymous, who are lettered, who have written songs that reflect the history and geography and culture and values of a society. And I think what actually makes it folk music is that the people adopt the music. So you can write a great song that nobody adopts, and it's not a song of the people. It's not a song of the folks.
It doesn't enter the folk process.
Yeah. And then you have these songs, Woody Guthrie as an example, This Land Is Your Land. How can you not call that a folk song?
Yeah.
But we know who wrote that.
Yeah.
But it's a song that sings about the history and geography and culture and value. And it's a song that people have adopted and re-adopted and adapted.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, let me try another definition out of
Okay.
you. Okay. More graduate school work here.
Okay.
Folk revival, by definition, is where young performers popularize the musical styles of their ancestors. So folk revival has been called old wine in new bottles. Would you call yourself would you call yourself a folk revivalist?
I've played around with that term.
Yeah.
You know, putting a label on yourself is hard. I put a label on myself that's kind of like blinders on a horse.
Yeah.
They do two things. They block your peripheral vision, so they blind you, but they also give you focus.
Yeah.
So
It's a trade-off.
It's a trade-off, and so revival. If someone's interested in that style of music you just described, since I do that, and they wanted to know what kind of music I would do, then I would use that term.
Yeah. Would you say that your music is pop music rather than folk music?
I say that my music, let's see if I can say this eloquently, my music is respectful towards the traditions of roots music, towards the traditions of folk, blues, maybe even gospel music.
Acoustic music?
Acoustic music, but it's got a contemporary sound to it. So it's. I would say that I'm continuing the evolution of the tradition.
Okay. You know, talking about working the boundary between pop and tradition, I'm thinking of Pete Seeger.
Oh, yeah.
And I was very curious, how did you hook up with Pete Seeger? How did you meet him, and how did you become his protege, so to speak?
Well, you know, it's fun. It goes back to this idea of coincidence that's not a mere coincidence. It makes sense that after all these years I finally met Pete. The way that it actually came about happening was somebody heard a song in 2003. Someone heard one of my songs that I sing called Vote, and said, you know, you should send that off to Pete Seeger. And I said to her, I said, you know, I've heard of this guy. I don't really know who he is. You're like the fifth person who said that. I said, here's a copy of my CD. You send it to Pete Seeger.
Ah.
And then I got a postcard.
That's clever. That's clever.
Yeah, well, I got a postcard.
Not quite so self-serving. Yeah.
Well, yeah, yes. You know, to be a professional musician, there's so much that has to get done. You can't do it yourself anyway.
Yeah, right.
And you want to include people, and it's a folk process.
And also,
there.
this friend of yours was endorsing you, in effect.
Yeah, in a sense. And it turns out that her name's Sharon Leahy, and she actually has been working with Pete for a few decades now. So when he got a letter from her and she said, listen to this song, he listened to it.
He actually listened.
And he sent me a postcard and invited me to come up to a festival.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, Pete's a very magnanimous man.
Yeah, I share that view. There's some famous people who are not kind to newcomers, but he's not like that.
No.
Yeah.
He invited me to the festival. He opened up for me.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm nobody. He opens up for me. He gets the whole crowd. Everybody's gathered around hearing him singing the songs. And right in the middle of his set, he calls me up.
It's an incredibly generous thing to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he does it for everybody.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Pete Seeger, do you know the song "If I Had a Hammer"?
Let's see if I can remember that song. No, yes, I do.
Okay. Let's do it.
I grew up with that, sure. Okay.
If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning, I'd hammer in the evening, all over this land. I'd hammer out danger, I'd hammer out warning, I'd hammer out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. And if I had a bell, I'd ring it in the morning, I'd ring it in the evening, all over this land. I'd bring out danger, I'd bring out warning, I'd bring out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. And if I had a song, I'd sing it in the morning, I'd sing it in the evening, all over this land. I'd sing out danger, I'd sing out warning, I'd sing out love between my brothers and my sisters all over this land. Well, I've got a hammer, and I've got a bell, and I've got a song to sing all over this land. It's the hammer of justice, it's the bell of freedom, it's a song about love between my brothers and my sisters all over this land.
As a follow-up to the song If I Had a Hammer, can you illuminate us a little bit? What is the meaning of the hammer and the bell and the song?
Well, you know, it's funny because it says so right in the song. And I knew this song as a kid, but didn't realize the significance of this until you know, just in the last couple of years. The hammer is the hammer of justice, as it says in the 4th verse. It's the idea written into the United States Constitution of justice for all. Okay, the bell is the bell of freedom, representative of our freedom. Another principle that this nation was built upon.
Like the Liberty Bell.
Like the Liberty Bell, yes, exactly. And the song that we sing is probably the most important thing. It's our right to free speech. It's our right to introspect, to look into ourselves, and to express what we find in ourselves as truth and guidance, and to share that, and that's what free speech is about, and that's what that song says. And then it says that if we use those tools, the hammer of justice, the bell of freedom, and the song of love, and we use that for all of our brothers and all of our sisters, and when you think about when this song was written, 1949, brothers and sisters meant more than just two different sexes, two different genders. It also meant the different races. You know, that these are principles that are for everybody in this country, and that using those tools, we can carry out further perfect the vision of the founders of this country. Yeah.
Well, that leads me to my next question. Would you consider yourself a social activist?
You know, labels, you know, I don't know. You know, I think if you just listen to what I just said, I would consider myself more to be a philosopher. And I believe that what makes America is the ideas and the ideals and the philosophies behind it. So when I see America not living up to these ideals and philosophies, I will speak up about it, and I will participate actively in events that will try to help people re-examine these issues and these philosophies. So in that sense, secondarily, I can see myself considered a social activist. But primarily, it's like I'm a lover of America, and I'm a lover of these ideals and principles, and I want to see those brought to fruition.
Well, let me push you a little harder. Would you be involved, say, with a peace movement?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And would you be involved with the labor movement?
You know, nothing against labor. It's an issue that I just haven't attached myself to for whatever reason. Maybe it's because I didn't, you know, I have had jobs, but I never worked in a union. I'm in the musicians union now, but that hasn't happened yet.
Have you been involved with disarmament?
Yes.
Okay. Do you ever find yourself under criticism for espousing these liberal causes?
I'm going to criticize you for calling them liberal causes. Because I'll tell you what, why should peace even be a political cause? Why should it be political? It should be, a humanitarian or a spiritual or religious cause.
Okay, I'll take that criticism. One philosopher to another.
Yeah. Plus, I don't mind that either. I just think it's just funny. It's like,
Well, I know that you've been a prolific songwriter. Let's leave it at that.
Okay,
and one of my favorites in your repertoire is Missoula, which I understand you were sort of commissioned to write that. You were urged to write it by the city fathers.
Yes. Well,
how did that come about?
Yeah. Well, it just happened when I was out in Missoula a few years ago. I fell in love with the town, and when I am not much of a sightseer. I like to go places and be in that place.
Yeah.
And so I wandered throughout the whole town. I ended up in City Hall, and I met people and said hi, and I gave them my card and talked to them, and so on and so forth. And then a little bit later, I was on the West Coast, and I got a phone call from the city council, and they said, "We're looking for somebody who can write a song about Missoula for our upcoming Huckleberry Pie Festival." And I got in the car and I headed back to Missoula, and the song hit me as soon as when I turned the car on, it was as if the radio came on and I heard my song Missoula playing. Yeah, it starts off, "I'm going back to Missoula."
Can you play it for us?
Absolutely. Let me grab my guitar.
I'm going back to Missoula to find my huckleberry pie, to cleanse myself in the clear, clean river and watch the college girls strolling by. I'm going back to the Rockies, where I think I'll stay until the day that I die. I'm gonna leave this fast-paced city life behind. I'd like to build a shack in the mountains where natives once called home, overlooking golden valleys where buffalo once roamed. I'd like to bring them back to the Rockies, where we all can stay until the day that we die. I'd like to help them leave the reservations behind. I'm gonna break my plastic piggy and buy a piece of big sky. I'd rather roam with cattle and reptiles that rattle than pretend that this place ain't a sty. I'm gonna stake my claim in the Rockies and eat my food fresh from the vine. I'm gonna leave this stinking city life behind. Whoa, ho, ho, Jennifer, I'm so afraid that you won't understand. You say that we don't have enough money, but listen to my plan. And you know I can make it alone, but honey, if you come along with me, we can weave our dreams together, wear our love like it's a sweater, and chew on our sleeves when we're hungry. So hop the next freight to Missoula. I'm camped outside the shipping yard. We can cleanse ourselves in the clear, clean river and watch the college kids skating board. Won't you come with me to the Rockies and be my huckleberry pie? And I will treat you sweet in every way until the day that we die. And we can kiss this fast-paced city life goodbye.
Spook, do you ever think of yourself as a disciple of Woody Guthrie? I know he wrote topical songs on pressing issues of his day.
Yeah. I would think of myself more as a disciple of Pete Seeger. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I'm in contact with Pete. You know, I talk with him maybe every month or so.
Whereas you were too young to be hooked up with.
Too young to be hooked up with Woody.
Yeah, yeah.
And and I learned a lot from Pete. I learned a lot. I watch him play, and he does things. I'm like, that's how you do that. You know, I like to get the audience involved. And how do you do that? Well, Pete's a master at it, and he's still doing it.
The testimonials on your website from your audiences give you a great deal of credit for getting the audience involved. And I've attended many of your concerts, and I've seen you do it. How do you do it? It's really kind of magical the way you get people hooked into the spirit of the occasion.
Well, you know, here's the confessional part of this story. I played the night before I met Pete Seeger. The first time I met him in October of 2003. The night before that, I played a concert in North Jersey, and I played Probably If I Had a Hammer during the first set. And some young kids, maybe 12 or 13, came up during the break and asked me if I would play more Peter, Paul, and Mary. And I said no. I said it's not in my plans to do that. And the idea was because I'm going to sing more of my own songs. I want to get my songs out there, you know. And then when I met Pete the next day, the very first thing he said to me, he didn't say hello. He didn't say, "Oh, I'm Pete, pleased to meet you." He said, "Do you know what Founder's disease is?" And of course, I did know what Founder's disease is, but I wanted to hear his answer, so I said no. He said, "Founder's disease is when an organization that was founded 30 years ago is still run by the same people today, and they're not handing it off to the next generation." And that was the first seed that was planted in my consciousness to realize that the music culture, and especially songs, if you want them to be folk songs, belong to the people. And so it's not about me going up there and singing. I started to see that I could play a role more as a conductor to get everybody else to sing. And you know, and the expert at that is Pete Seeger.
He's really good at that.
There's lots of other people who do it too. And I take notes all the time and watch how they do that. And I try different things. I've even called Pete on the phone and said, you know what? I had this concert. I did this. I couldn't get the kids to be quiet. What do? He says, get them to sing louder. You go like this, and you get them to sing louder. And then they sing as loud as they can, and you go like this. And you get them to sing quieter, and you go like that. You know, and you learn these little things. You watch, you talk, you listen, you try, you experiment. So, yeah. Yeah,
because it's better than having just a passive audience where they just sort of sit back and take it in.
Well, I'm not going to say it's better. There's a place for that, too. And in my concerts, I find, you know, one of the things I find is the best time to put in a song that's passive, that's really going to hit people, especially if it's got a rougher, harder message, is right in between two songs that are funny and get everybody singing. You know? So it's a tapestry of emotions, a tapestry of the involvement. Get them singing 3 or 4 songs, sing a song that they listen to, you know, but mix it up, get them involved. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for sharing all this with us today. It was really great.
Thanks for having me, Angus. It's great, really great.
Okay.
Mama bars the windows, Papa's bolting down the door. There's a brand new mall, folks ain't coming anymore. Down to Mom and Pop's small town corner hardware store. Condos and McMansions line the fields that once grew corn. The farmer's been uprooted, folks don't dig him anymore. Just like Mom and Pop's small